My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. People often say that family is the safest place in the world. I believed that for almost my entire life. I trusted my father more than anyone. If someone had told me a year ago that my own father would destroy everything I had worked for, I would have laughed and called them crazy. But life has a painful way of teaching lessons you never ask to learn. This is my story. Growing up, my family wasn't rich. My father, Richard Carter, owned a small auto repair shop. Business was never great, but somehow we always had food on the table. My mother, Linda, worked part-time at a local grocery store. She was the kind of woman who always put everyone else's happiness before her own. Then there was my younger sister, Emma. She was 6 years younger than me, cheerful and full of dreams. Even when life became difficult, she somehow found a reason to smile. As the oldest child, I always felt responsible for my family. When I was 16, I started working after school. I stocked shelves at a supermarket, delivered pizzas on weekends, and spent my evenings studying computer programming from free online courses. While my friends were enjoying parties or vacations, I stayed home writing lines of code on an old laptop that crashed almost every hour. My father used to pat me on the shoulder and smile. One day, he would say, "You're going to make this family proud." Those words meant everything to me. After graduating from college with a degree in computer science, I found a job at a software company. The salary wasn't amazing, but it was enough to help pay bills and save money. Every paycheck had a purpose. I lived in a tiny apartment with old furniture. I drove a used car that rattled every time I started the engine. I rarely bought new clothes. Instead of spending money on myself, I invested every extra dollar into an idea that had lived inside my head for years. I wanted to build software that helped small businesses manage their customers more easily. Most people thought it was just another impossible dream. But I couldn't let it go. For 3 years, I worked at my full-time job during the day and built my software every night. Many mornings, I watched the sunrise from my apartment window before finally falling asleep for 2 or 3 hours. It was exhausting. There were nights when I wanted to quit. There were moments when I stared at my computer screen and wondered if I was wasting my youth chasing something that would never happen. Whenever those thoughts appeared, my father always seemed to know. He would call me unexpectedly. "Don't give up, son," he'd say. "Great things take time." His encouragement gave me strength. Slowly, my software began attracting attention. A local coffee shop became my first customer, then a bookstore, then a dental clinic. Word spread faster than I expected. Within 2 years, hundreds of small businesses were using my program. I finally left my full-time job and started my own company. Walking into my tiny office on the first day felt like stepping into a dream I had been chasing for almost a decade. There were only 4 employees, second-hand desks, and coffee that tasted terrible. But to me, it was perfect. When I brought my parents to see the office, my mother wiped tears from her eyes. "I always knew you could do this," she whispered. My father looked around proudly before wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I've never been more proud of anyone," he said. Then he smiled at me. "You don't have to carry all this responsibility alone anymore. Let me help you with the business side. You focus on building great products. I'll protect everything you've worked for." Those words filled me with relief. After years of carrying every burden by myself, I finally believed I could trust someone else. I looked into my father's eyes and saw only love. I had no idea that this single decision would become the biggest mistake of my life. Looking back now, I can see the warning signs. At the time, they looked like love. My father started coming to the office almost every day. He greeted my employees with a warm smile, brought donuts on Friday mornings, and acted like everyone's favorite boss. Even my team liked him. "Your dad is amazing," my assistant Sarah told me one afternoon. "You're lucky to have someone with so much business experience." I smiled. "I know." Those words are painful to remember. At first, my father only handled simple tasks. He organized invoices, talked with our accountant, and reviewed contracts before I signed them. It saved me hours every week. I was finally able to focus on improving our software and listening to customers. Our company began growing faster than I had ever imagined. By the end of our second year, we had more than 20 employees and hundreds of clients across the country. We moved into a larger office with bright windows, modern meeting rooms, and enough space for everyone. For the first time in my life, I felt successful. One evening, my father and I stood in the office after everyone had gone home. He looked around with pride. "You built all of this," he said. "We built it," I corrected him with a smile. He laughed and patted my shoulder. "I like hearing that." I meant every word. He wasn't just my father anymore. He was my business partner, my advisor, and the person I trusted more than anyone. A few weeks later, he invited me to dinner. While we were eating, he became unusually serious. "Ethan," he said quietly, "your company is getting big." "I hope so." "No," he replied. "You don't understand. Success attracts problems." I frowned. "What kind of problems?" "Taxes, lawsuits, competitors. If everything stays in your name, one mistake could destroy everything." His words made me nervous. I had spent years learning how to build software, but I knew almost nothing about business law. "I've been talking with our lawyer," he continued. "There are a few documents we should update. It will protect the company." I didn't question him. Why would I? He was my father. The following Monday, he placed several folders on my desk. "There are just a few legal forms," he said. "Nothing complicated." The pages were full of legal language that I barely understood. He pointed to the places where I needed to sign. "Our attorney already explained everything," he said. "This is standard." I trusted him completely. Without reading every page, I signed my name, again and again and again. He gathered the papers, smiled, and said, "Smart decision." I never thought about those documents again. Months passed. The business continued to grow. We hired more employees, signed contracts with larger companies, and even received interest from investors. Life felt almost perfect. Around that time, I met Olivia Brooks. She was a graphic designer who joined our marketing team. Olivia had a calm personality and a kind smile that made stressful days feel lighter. Unlike many people, she wasn't impressed by money. She admired hard work. One evening, after we finished a long meeting, we walked to the parking lot together. "You look exhausted," she said. I laughed. "I probably am." "You carry too much by yourself?" "Not anymore," I answered. "My father takes care of the business side now." She smiled politely, but didn't say anything for a moment. Finally, she spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever check the financial reports yourself?" I looked surprised. "My dad handles all that." "I know," she said carefully, "but it's still your company." I shrugged. "I trust him." She nodded, but her expression didn't change. "I'm sure you do." That night, her question stayed in my mind. The next morning, I asked my father if I could look through our financial records. He laughed. "Of course. But honestly, you'll only give yourself a headache." He opened a cabinet and handed me several thick folders. The numbers looked confusing. Everything seemed normal. I closed the folders after only 15 minutes. "I told you," he said with a grin. "Leave the paperwork to me." I laughed too. "I guess you're right." Deep inside, a small voice told me I should learn more about the business. But I ignored it. After all, why would a father ever lie to his own son? I didn't know that every document I had signed, every report I had ignored, and every question I had decided not to ask was quietly leading me toward the worst day of my life. And that day was much closer than I could have imagined. The worst day of my life began like any other Tuesday. I woke up early, made a cup of coffee, and kissed Olivia goodbye before leaving for the office. I was excited. That afternoon, we were supposed to meet with a group of investors who wanted to help us expand our software across the country. After years of hard work, it felt like everything was finally coming together. I had no idea that my dream was already gone. As I walked into the office, something felt different. The receptionist, Mia, looked nervous. She avoided my eyes. A few employees stopped talking when they saw me. I forced a smile. "Morning, everyone." Only a few people answered. My stomach tightened. I walked into my office and found my father sitting behind my desk. Behind my desk. He wasn't smiling. Instead, he looked calm, almost cold. "Good morning, Ethan," he said. "What are you doing in my office?" He folded his hands together. "We need to talk." A strange feeling washed over me. Before I could ask another question, our company lawyer walked in. He carried a thick folder and placed it on the desk between us. "I don't understand," I said. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Carter." He paused before continuing. "As of last Friday, Richard Carter became the majority owner and legal director of the company." I laughed. "What?" "I'm serious." I looked at my father. "What kind of joke is this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly pushed the folder toward me. Inside were dozens of legal documents. Every page carried my signature. My hands started shaking. "No." I flipped through the papers faster and faster. Ownership transfer, board authority, financial control, voting rights, company assets. Every document had been signed by me months earlier. "This can't be real," I whispered. "It is," the lawyer replied quietly. "You signed every agreement voluntarily." I stared at my father. "You told me these were routine business papers." "They were business papers," he answered without emotion. "You lied to me." "I protected the company." "You stole it!" His voice suddenly became louder. "I built this family long before you built this company." "You built this?" I shouted. "I worked every night for 8 years. I missed birthdays. I skipped vacations. I sacrificed everything." My father stood up and looked me straight in the eyes. "And without me, none of it would have happened." Those words hit harder than any punch. The room became painfully quiet. Finally, he spoke again. "As of today, you're no longer the CEO." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What? The board has voted." "What board?" "The board you approved." I remembered another stack of papers. Another day. Another signature. Another mistake. "No." "I'm sorry," he said, but there wasn't a single trace of regret in his voice. "This is business." Business? I wasn't losing a business. I was losing my life. Within an hour, security arrived. One of the guards looked embarrassed. "Mr. Carter." He hesitated. "We've been instructed to collect your company laptop, office key, and access card." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is my company." No one answered. I slowly removed my employee badge and placed it on the desk. The office that had once felt like home suddenly felt like a place where I didn't belong. As I walked through the hallway, employees lowered their heads. Some looked shocked, some looked afraid. Sarah quietly whispered, "I'm so sorry." No one knew what to say. Neither did I. Outside, I sat in my car for nearly an hour. I couldn't start the engine. I couldn't think. I simply stared through this windshield while tears rolled down my face. Then my phone rang. It was my bank. "Mr. Carter, we're calling regarding your business accounts." Relieved, I answered quickly. "Yes." "We need to inform you that your access has been removed. The authorized account holder requested changes this morning." "What?" "You are no longer listed as an owner." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I checked my banking app. Every business account was gone. My personal savings account, which I had linked to the company years earlier, had also been frozen until ownership questions were resolved. My balance showed almost nothing. Everything I had earned, everything I had saved, everything I had built was beyond my reach. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. I needed answers. My mother opened the front door. The moment she saw my face, she burst into tears. "Ethan! Where is Dad?" She couldn't answer. "He knew," I whispered. "You knew too, didn't you?" She covered her mouth with trembling hands. "I begged him not to do it," she cried. "He said it was for the family." I stepped inside. My father was sitting in the living room, calmly watching television as if nothing had happened. He looked at me for only a second before turning back to the screen. In that moment, I realized something even more painful than losing my company. I hadn't just lost my business, I had lost my father. And I still didn't know how much more he had taken from me. I left my parents' house that night without saying another word. There was nothing left to say. The man I had admired my entire life wasn't the father I thought I knew. He had taken more than my company. He had stolen my trust. For weeks, I barely left my apartment. I ignored phone calls. I stopped answering messages. Every morning, I woke up hoping everything had been a nightmare. Every morning, reality broke my heart all over again. One evening, Olivia knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, she looked at me with concern. "You haven't answered anyone for days," she said softly. "I don't know who I am anymore." She stepped inside and placed 2 cups of coffee on the table. "You are still Ethan." I shook my head. "I lost everything." She looked directly into my eyes. "No. You lost a company. You didn't lose your talent. You didn't lose your kindness. And you didn't lose the ability to build something new." Her words stayed with me long after she left. A few days later, my younger sister, Emma, called me. "I need to see you," she whispered. We met at a small park where we used to play as children. She looked nervous as she handed me a large brown envelope. "I found these in Dad's home office." Inside were copies of emails, bank records, and handwritten notes. As I read through them, my hands trembled. The truth was even worse than I had imagined. For nearly 3 years, my father had secretly planned to take control of my company. He had instructed the lawyer to prepare ownership documents while telling me they were routine business forms. He had even written a note that said, "Once the company grows enough, Ethan won't have a choice." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't understand what he was doing." I hugged her tightly. "This isn't your fault." With Emma's evidence, I hired a new attorney. The legal battle lasted almost a year. It was exhausting. Some days we won small victories. Other days it felt hopeless. In the end, the court ruled that several documents had been signed through deception. While I couldn't recover the entire company because new investors and contracts had changed ownership, I received financial compensation and regained the rights to the software I had originally created. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to begin again. Instead of chasing the past, I focused on the future. Using the settlement money and countless late nights, I started a new software company with a small team of people who believed in honesty more than profit. Olivia stood beside me through every step. A year later, she became my wife. She often reminded me, "The strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who keep getting back up." She was right. Our new company grew slowly, but this time I understood every contract, every financial report, and every signature. I never signed another document without reading every word. 3 years later, our business became even more successful than the first one. One rainy afternoon, I received a phone call from my mother. Her voice was weak. "Ethan, your father is in the hospital." I was silent for several seconds. "He had a stroke," she continued. "His business failed. He lost almost everything. The irony was impossible to ignore. Greed had destroyed the very future he tried to steal. I visited him the next day. He looked older, smaller, and far more fragile than I remembered. When he saw me, tears rolled down his face. "I was wrong," he whispered. "I'm sorry." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said quietly, "I forgive you." Hope appeared in his eyes. Then I continued, "But forgiveness doesn't erase what happened." "I can care about you." "I can help pay your medical bills. But I can never trust you with my life or my dreams again." He closed his eyes and nodded. For the first time, he understood the cost of his choices. As I walked out of the hospital, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I realized that my greatest success wasn't building a company. It was refusing to let betrayal turn me into a bitter person. My father stole everything I had worked for. But he couldn't steal my knowledge. He couldn't steal my determination. And he could never steal the person I chose to become. Sometimes life doesn't give us the ending we planned. It gives us the ending we need. Because losing everything taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Never let someone else's greed convince you that your future is gone. As long as you still have courage, honesty, and hope, you can always build again.